Joining me now is Congressman Keith Rothfus. He serves on both the Judiciary and the Financial Services Committees. We're happy to have him here. Congressman, what do you, first of all, just pull back. This is Comey week. We had all of the conversations, and he said he's still having them into the weekend, and, of course, the memos. What do you make of this week and how it's affected the investigations?
Well, it's been quite a week, and I'm glad that the memos are finally out. You know, it's been like pulling teeth from the Department of Justice and other agencies for congressional oversight. These memos were released. I think it took the threat of a subpoena to get them, unfortunately. But we're taking a look at them, and I think there are questions that do come up. I've been taking a look at them. Parts of them are redacted. What was classified information, what should not have been disclosed. We know that Director Comey gave these apparently to a friend, so I think that's what's being looked at.
Well, and what's being looked at might turn out to be criminal. You add to that all of the contradictions in what he has said and what the memos show in his reactions and interactions with members of his staff like Mr. McCabe. He and McCabe are now at war, even though the memo itself, he's constantly praising McCabe as a good friend and an able servant. Then there is this.
Well, and don't forget that very complimentary. Don't forget that very complimentary tweet that Director Comey put out about the Deputy Director McCabe.
Sure.
After he was let go.
Well, and we saw the tweets. We saw in the memo itself. There are many references, at least a half a dozen that I saw, where he said how good McCabe was. Now they're at war. But then there is also this, and I want to quote from his memo. This is one that was done right after he had dinner with President Trump shortly after the inauguration in January of 2017. I told President Trump, I don't do sneaky things. I don't leak. I don't do weasel moves. Well, a lot of people would say a lot of his moves are weasel, but we know that, in fact, he did leak because he said that he leaked. So, I mean, there's just these inconsistencies. I think at the end of the day, doesn't Comey look much worse at the end of this week than he did at the beginning?
Yeah, I don't think this has been a good week for him, and you have to go back to these memos and start taking a closer look at them, because these things always raise more questions. For example, you look at that first memo about the January 6th meeting, and apparently President Obama's Director of National Intelligence, Clapper, wanted this said to the president, and so Comey went in there with a plan. According to his own memo, he executed that plan. I'd like to know, did he tell the president that this was from the dossier that was paid for by the DNC and by the Clinton campaign?
That's a very good question. In fact, Kim Strassel of the Wall Street Journal had a whole list of questions that are not being asked of him this week. But, you know, the conservatives and Republicans who have been castigating Comey, I think for pretty good reasons, have gotten a lot of grief from people saying, you guys are just down on the FBI, you should be supporting the FBI, when in fact they've been very unsupportive of law enforcement in the past. But now we see that, in fact, James Comey and others who were leading the FBI were doing more to hurt the agency than anybody else. And the scholar, Jonathan Turley, a great legal scholar, spoke to this issue last night on Fox News. Let me just play the soundbite and get your reaction.
He was the head of this investigation and is now one of the cooperating witnesses. Nobody would suggest that this book is benefiting the investigation. To the contrary, he's undermining his role as a witness. And so the question is, why is he doing it? And the answer is rather obvious. He's going to make a lot of money, but in the process, he's going to do untold harm to the institution he once headed.
Untold harm to the FBI. Do you agree?
And there are very good men and women who work at the FBI who are doing a very good job. But this is not just a one-sided criticism of Director Comey. You go back to after the election and listen to what the Democrats were saying about Director Comey with the actions he took immediately before the election. Again, Director Comey made a number of mistakes. You take a look at the Deputy Attorney General Rosenstein's memo, which formed the basis for his dismissal. I think there are grounds to dismiss Director Comey as early as January 20th, if not before. January 20th, 2017, if not before.
Switching now for the moment to the Democratic lawsuit, which, as I mentioned in the beginning, just really throws a net over practically the entire United States, as a lot of people would say is a desperate move. But the extraordinary thing is it comes from a party that spent millions of dollars hiring a former spy to use Russian disinformation about one of the candidates in the 2016 election, and then get people that were anti-Trump at the FBI to use it to obtain a FISA warrant to spy on the Trump campaign. This is the party that is suing the GOP. Shouldn't it be the other way around?
Well, this is obviously a political move, and I think there'd be grounds for a countersuit based on what you're saying. But
yeah.
to imply that there's some kind of conspiracy between Russia and the Trump campaign, look, take a look at what was going on with both Secretary Clinton as Secretary of State and President Obama and his policies. You know, just as they came into office, as Secretary Clinton came in, she presented Russia with a reset button. Russia was the aggressor in Georgia. This is just 6 months after they invade Georgia. The Obama administration cancels missile defenses in Eastern Europe, basically do nothing in the Crimea crisis, the Ukraine crisis, when the Malaysian airliner gets shot down. The Obama administration cedes influence in the Middle East, lets Russia go right into Syria.
Not to mention, Congressman, 20% of our uranium reserves going to a Russian company, which was at the same time the board members of which were contributing heavily to the Clinton Foundation.
And we can't forget President Obama whispering he'll have more flexibility after his election. Look at the Trump policies on energy development. Russia would not have wanted President Trump to come in with that kind of a policy.
Well, Congressman, it looks like you are now beginning to make the case for a countersuit. Are you planning to do that, make a countersuit to what the Democrats just did?
Well, that's not my call. I'm not a party to the litigation, and I will let those who are taking a look at that do what they think they need to do to defend themselves.
But bottom line is that we have a group saying that attacking the democratic process. They say that the GOP in 2016 attacked the democratic process when, in fact, you look at what Democrats did, spent millions of dollars paying to Fusion GPS to put together this Trump dossier, working with their friends behind the scenes in the FBI. You have the head of the FBI not telling the president-elect of the United States a year ago that, in fact, the Trump dossier was funded by the DNC, didn't think it was important. I mean, there is a lot of evidence that is stacking up, pointing back. There's a word in psychology called projection. You project on others the faults that you have in yourself. I think that's what's going on here.
Well, again, you have to go back to the election as well, though, and look at the substance of the election. You had a candidate at the head of the Democratic Party who was talking about deplorables across the country and not visiting parts of the country and not campaigning, and then having a history of issues with the private server where 30,000 emails, we had subpoenaed the server. They were destroyed. People taking hammers to BlackBerries. There was a very flawed candidate who was running back then, and they want to do anything but take responsibility for that.
Well, Congressman, we appreciate you coming on. Welcome to the Judiciary Committee, and please come back and see us here at Fox Business.
Look forward to following up with you. It's a great night for hockey in Pittsburgh.
All right.
Thank you.
Good luck on that.